All right, so we're going to work on some word problems, and I decided to go ahead and make a video because the other class has finished their test today, and I don't want to disturb them. So you just pause the video and take notes as needed, but make sure you take all of them. So we're going to start off with some application problems involving squares and square roots, and I hope you all are familiar with formulas, or you can follow a formula. If not, I hope you are able to pick up on what I'm doing. If you're not able to pick up on what I'm doing, pause the video and call me over to your desk, okay? All right, so you got this worker down the Rio Grande Bridge there in New Mexico, and this worker drops a boat that lands in the water 576 feet below. So they're on this bridge, and they have the water here. And so the worker drops a boat, and the boat goes 576, a distance of 576 feet. The equation d divided by 16 equals to t squared. Now we're going to talk about what d and t mean in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and write that down, the equation. Instead of calling it an equation, guys, I call them formulas. But in order to understand the formula, you need to know what each variable represents. So let's go on. It says the equation d divided by 16 equals to t squared represents the distance in feet, which is d. So it tells us what d is. D is distance. So whenever they give you a formula, you need to look for that. So I'm going to go over here on the side and write d is distance. And it tells me it's in terms of feet. Okay, that's important info. That an object falls in t seconds. So it says t seconds. So it tells me t has a unit of seconds. So if t has a unit of seconds, that has to mean that t represents time. So the unit for distance is feet, and the units for time is seconds. Every measurement has to be measured in something. Distance is measured in feet, time is measured in seconds. Okay, now let's go on and look at our question. The question says, how long does it take the boat to hit the water? In other words, after how many seconds will it take the boat to hit the water? How many seconds will it take the boat to hit the water? So which one of these variables am I looking for? Am I looking for d, which is distance, or t, which is time? Well, if it says how long will it take the boat to hit the water, I'm looking for time. Again, the number of seconds it's going to take that boat to hit the water. So if I'm looking for time, they had to give me d, or distance, because you can't solve an equation or a formula with two unknowns or two variables. So if you have two variables in your formula, rest assured you'll get a number for one of them. If you see three variables, rest assured you will get a number for two of them. If you saw four variables, you would get a number for three of them. Okay? You're only going to be able to, when you have a formula, you should only have one variable left. So you should have numbers for the other variables and only one variable left. Okay, so I am looking for time. So I'm trying to figure out how many seconds, which means they gave me a number for distance, or the letter D. So let's go back up and look and see what distance the boat fell. The boat fell a distance of 576 feet. And it's over here when I drew my little illustration. So although you have two variables, they gave you a number for D. The number for D is 576. And we just solved for T. Okay, so given a number for D, and I want to figure out if I drop that boat 576 feet, how many seconds it's going to take the boat to hit the water. All I do is use this formula and it'll tell me exactly how many seconds it's going to take that boat to hit the water. So, but I have a number for D. So I'm going to take D out and replace it with 576. And this just means divide. So 576 divided by 16. Let's see what that is. Let's see if I calculate. All right, that's 48. Regroup here. That's 96. It's 36. So 576 divided by 16 is 36. So 36 equals to T squared. Now, normally we don't take D out. We don't erase D and put in 576. I'm going to show you what we normally do, okay? Normally, if you have a formula, instead of taking D out, you just go down a line and replace D with 576. So you don't really erase D. I just did it in this problem over here because it looks better to start off with. But it doesn't matter if you just keep the D and on the next line put in 576 divided by 16, or you erase the D as we did over here and put in 576 in its place. Remember, D is feet, distance in feet. All right, so now this is basically 36 equals to time squared because it's got the square on it. I don't want time squared. I just want the time, okay? So how do I go from time squared to just time, or T squared to just T? Well, we learned about inverse operations, and we know to get rid of a square, we take the square root. So if you don't want time squared, your job will be to take the square root. But what you do to one side of the equation, you do to the other side. So the square root of time squared is just time, or T, or the square root of T squared is just T. It's just like having the square root of x squared is x, but we just use the letter T for time. It'll be T. Now, I didn't put the plus or minus in front of this, and I'll tell you why I didn't, because time can't be negative. So if I'm solving for time, time cannot be negative, so it's pointless to put plus or minus in front of that square root symbol. I'm looking only for the principal or positive square root. So the square root of 36 is 6. I'm going to put the units on it. 6 what? 6 seconds, okay? So I'm going to go over here and put 6 seconds. So if I drop a boat off a bridge and it's 500, a distance of 576 feet, it's going to take 6 seconds before that boat hits the water. All right, if you didn't understand some part of that, just pause the video and call me over. I'll come over and explain it myself. All right, it has, number 2 says, how do you know that the value of T cannot be negative? And I need you to, because T, in this case, represents time. And time cannot be negative. Whenever you have a formula or application problem, you have to look at what each variable represents. If the variable represents something that can't be negative, don't put a negative answer, okay? But that's if you have some type of application problem. Okay, so let's take a look at 3. 3 says Brianna is solving the equation T squared equals to 36 divided by 121. Her work is shown below. Is Brianna correct? Explain. So this is Brianna's work. She starts off with T squared equals to 36 over divided by 121. She takes the square root of both sides. The square root of t squared is t. That's how she got t. She took the square root of this, but she also put plus or minus. So she ends up with plus or minus 6 over 11. So everything looks right to me, but some students think that she shouldn't have written the plus or minus because in their mind, they're still thinking that t represents time. Well, this is a completely different problem. So look back up here. It says because t in this case referring to this application problem right here, the one where the boat was dropped off the bridge. Look at this case. This is a completely different case. She's just working a regular math problem. It does not give us a representation for t. We don't know what t represents. This is just a regular equation. So she is correct because whenever you have a square in a regular equation, you put plus or minus. And I told you all that. Let's see if I can go back to those notes. Here, when solving an equation involving x squared, it could be t squared or a squared or b squared, doesn't matter. Basically, when solving an equation involving a square, you need both the positive and negative square root. We talked about that the other day. So this is just, if I go back, this is just a basic equation involving a square. So I'm going to put she is correct. This is a basic equation involving a square. So we need both the positive and negative answer. Let's go with positive and negative square root. Now, had it told us that t represents time or something like that, I would have just gone with she's incorrect. T represents time. Time can't be negative, but there was nothing in that problem that said t represented time. Let's take a look at 4. It says, yesterday there were B milligrams of bacteria in a lab. So let's write that down real quick. Yesterday represents B milligrams. Today there are B squared milligrams of bacteria. Today is represented by the square of B. Okay, so let's try to understand that. I'm going from B to B squared. In other words, if I give you a number for yesterday, so yesterday, suppose B equals 3. Yesterday there are 3 milligrams. Then today there will be, instead of B squared, because B is now 3, today there will be 3 square milligrams, which is 9 milligrams. Or today, yesterday, suppose I say there were 10 milligrams. Well, today you would have to square that to get how many there are today. You have to square B to see how many there are today. So if I square 10, because again, you take B and square it to figure out how many there are today. And B is 10. Square it. Today there would be 100. So if you want to go from yesterday to today, all you have to do is square how many there were yesterday to get how many there are today. But what if you wanted to go backwards? Suppose I gave you how many there are today. Okay. Today I'll say there are 144 milligrams. 144 milligrams is, and if I'm on today, that's how many there are after they've been squared. So this represents the square of B. Okay, 144 represents the square of b. So if I want to figure out how many there were yesterday, which means I need to go from the square, back to just b. So in other words, I want to go from b squared, which represents 144, okay, back to just b, which is how many there were yesterday. Well, all we do is think about, well, how do we undo a square? Well, how do we undo a square? So if I want to undo b squared and go back to just b, take the square root. The square root of b squared is b. But I need to do it to this side too. Milligrams can't be negative. So I'm going to use the principal square root. So that would mean that would be 12 milligrams yesterday. So if you want to go from yesterday to today, square your b. If you want to go from today to yesterday, which means you're going from b squared to b, square root your b squared. Okay, so with all that being said, let's take a look at what we have in the problem. Get rid of all this. See if I'm going from today to yesterday or yesterday to today. Okay, so let's pick up right here. There are 400 milligrams of bacteria today. So I'm over here. So today there are 400. So that's after it's been squared. So that represents b squared. 400 is the same as b squared. Or that's how I got the 400. I squared b and got 400. So the question says, how many milligrams of bacteria were there yesterday? So I need to go from b squared back to just b, which is yesterday. So how do I get from b squared to b? Well, I'll take the square root of b squared. The square root of b squared is b. Square root of 400 is 20, because 20 times 20 is 400. So there were 20 milligrams yesterday. Again, if you're going from yesterday to today, square b. If you're going from today back to yesterday, square root b squared. So let's take a look at 5. 5 says the equation p squared equals to 16a represents the perimeter of a square with an area a. Again, that's another formula problem. So write it down. P squared equals to 16a. It should tell me what each one of those variables represents, so I know what I'm dealing with. P is your perimeter. And A is your area. Now, if you got two variables, they're going to give you a number for one of them, so let's be on the lookout for that. It says a square stained glass window has an area of 4 feet. There we go. It gave me the area. The area is 4, and it should say square feet, guys. It does. Then it goes on to ask, what is the perimeter of the window? So now I know I'm looking for P, but my unit is going to be feet. So I'm looking for how many feet the window is all the way around. Looking for the number of feet all the way around here, okay? All I know is that my area is 4 square feet. Now there's another way to figure this out. You could have taken the square root of 4 and gotten 2. And every side is 2. So the perimeter would be 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 feet, okay? But you can also use this formula, guys. All you have to do is take out the letter you have. Well, I have a letter for A. I have a number for A. The number for A is going to be 4. So I'm going to take this A out and replace it with 4. But I'm going to put a time sign in between these little dots to represent times. What else it'll look like? 164. Get that plant in. Daddy plant. The tree looking plant. All right, so A is 4. And it's multiplication. 16 times 4 is 64. Did she send a text? So I replace A with 4. So now I want to go from p squared. P squared means perimeter squared. I don't want the perimeter squared. I simply want the perimeter. That's it, not perimeter squared. So how do you undo a square? So go from perimeter squared to just perimeter, take the square root of p squared. But what I do to one side, I do to the other. So p is equal to 8, and it's in terms of feet. It's in terms of feet. So remember earlier, we got 8 feet another way. We just took the square root of 4, which is 2. So the side length is 2. And we added up that 4, or you could say 2 times 4. We added up 2 4 times, or you could say 2 times 4 is 8 feet. You could do it that way. But you could also use the formula that they gave you here. That works. But again, be careful, because when we have a number matched together with a letter, it means you're multiplying, okay? So that's why I put a little time sign there. All right, almost done. We don't have cardstock pieces. If we were doing this together in class, you would, but oh well. And you already know this basically, so we may not even draw cardstock pieces, okay? It says use cardstock pieces to build a square with an area of 16 square units. So you would supposed to be given little cardstock pieces where you can draw these or place these together. And you got to have a square. So it's got to be, you got to know it's a 4x4. It's a 4x4 structure. Stop it. So there's an area of 16, but it should help you to see that this is 4x4. But if you have area of a square, to find side length, when given area of a square, to find side length, that might have been her. You simply take the square root of the area, okay? So if I know the area is 16, it says what is the side length? So you're going to look for the square root of 16. The side length has to be 4. And it's, stop it. It's 4 units. I'm making a video. My goodness. Here the area of a square is 9. So if I want the length of the side, I just take the square root of 9. I get 3. And you don't know the units, so you just put 3 units. Here the area of a square is 4 square units. And you want the length of a side. You just do the square root of 4, which is 2. So going to number 9, it says the length of each side of a square is S inches. Basically, you don't know it. That's why they have a variable. I know it's in terms of inches, so that's the unit. The area of the square is 49 square inches. What is the length of one side? Basically, you need to undo the square. When you undo the square, because area is what it is after it's been, you get area by multiplying a number by itself, or you get area of a square by squaring a number. Okay? So if area is basically of a square, it's just a square of some number. So to undo a square, that's why we're able to take the square root. So take the square root of 49. It's going to undo the square, and we get 7 inches, guys. So basically, we know, and I want you all to make this connection. 7 times 7 gives us an area of 49, or 7 squared is 49. If I gave you 3 times 3, you get an area of 9. Or it's 3 squared. So these are squares. All these are squares. And to undo a square, we take the square root. taking a square root takes you back to your side length, guys. That's why that works. That's why taking the square root of the area will give you your side length, because you're undoing a square and just telling me what the side length was. All right, 10 says a square has an area of 81 square feet. I know the unit is feet. What's the side length? Well, the square root of 81 is 9, so the side length is 9 feet. And remember, if you need to go back, rewatch some of the video, that's fine, because you'll need to pause as needed and take notes. All right, so your job is to complete pages 567 and 568 in the on the Google Classroom tab for under the classwork section. But I will say on one problem, you might get something that looks like this. I'm just going to tell you to, whatever that number is, add it to both sides of the equation. -3 and +3 would cancel each other out. You'd be left with x squared equals 2, and 22 plus 3 is 25. Now, you're not going to have 22 and the -3 in the problem, but it's going to look like this. And then you would just take the square root of both sides. And I'm going to put plus or minus because this is just a regular equation. Now, that's not going to be your answer, so you need to look at what your actual equation is. I think this is like number 4 on one of these pages, I think. All right, guys, work on your homework for me. Thank you.